What's that, Leslie? Yeah, you can.
You can leave that there because we're not moving out today. You can leave your trolley here in front of you if you want to sit there, that's fine.
Did I give you one or two?
And friends with a few years when it's latter years, when he was having falls and all that type of stuff, I was taking down the hospital. Yeah, I'm Alan now. I'm Alan now. Yeah, that's how I know. Yeah, the same word, yeah. He was very clever man. Very interesting to listen to. Yeah, that's how I knew him because he used to bring me up, he wasn't feeling and I'd take him down to the hospital. Did that quite a few times. Then he ended up here at Menary. Yeah, no, that's what I thought it was doing.
Did you say have you signed outstanding? Yes. I'm down in the front row. We've got reserved seating for all your
I'll call Frankie if we go again.
Don't try that now.
It's hard to
When you are, yeah.
when you take the mask off, you can kill people.
Yeah. You're the one that does those beautiful donuts.
Sure.
There we go.
Mine, Christian finished with the nurse?
Yeah. A week to go.
Oh, that's right.
When we first sold years ago, it was part of the contract that we
Yeah.
had 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll put that there for you.
you like to put that on board, or wait until later? Yeah, I'll put it on there now.
Is this some of the songs that you used to sing? That are in the choir? The chorus of the slaves. Chord.
Yeah.
Who's this playing?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Picking up on the story. Totally in hospital.
Yeah.
Got down in the kitchen and fell over in the kitchen that time. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's that one fell over in the kitchen. Broke his leg. We struggled to get him in. Yeah. Oh, it's good. Yeah, it's talk. There's a lot of history. It was very interesting to talk. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, it's wonderful. Yes. Oh, it was. Oh, when I was just saying, it's not too bad then. So I went there and I took on my cable and cables and I said, where's your food? Where's your ice? I said, what's that one? I said, that's the yeah. So that's what we're going to do now. They're popped in there.
Sorry, mate.
Where's that? That's going to be like for a long time. Those protesters in Windsor, it's one of the advice you can drive in Windsor because it's all problems. Professional protests.
Ladies and gentlemen, we come together today to mourn the passing of and to honour a departed loved one and to show sympathy to the bereaved. My name is Kate Edwards and I see it as a privilege to be able to officiate at this, the funeral service for the life of William Smyth Menary, lovingly known as Will. I welcome you all. We are meeting here today to honour the life of Will, and this ceremony is an opportunity to join in saying goodbye to this man whom you have loved and respected. But it is more than that. It is a celebration of his life and a time to comfort those of his family and friends who are here today. You are here because this man of 82 years has come to mean something special to you. Will was born in Kuala Lumpur on Thursday, the 18th of May, 1939, the only child born to parents Emma and James Menary. Will was a husband to Daphne, who has sadly passed, a father to Jane, Christopher, who has also passed away, Kaylin and David, a granddad to his 5 grandchildren, and also a friend to many, just to name a few of the relationships that he has with you. Will passed away in Melaleuca Court Nursing Home on Tuesday, the 12th of October, 2021. Shortly we'll hear more of Will's life within the eulogies. In gathering here today, we mark the ending of the physical being of Will, and we carry amongst us the memories of what he has meant to us and what he has meant to those who knew him and the part that he played in the community of which he has lived. We gather to say our final farewell, to give our love and support to close family and friends, and to pay our last respects to him. Nobody wants to stop the grieving process, but we are all playing a part in this necessary human trait. It is the very support that we offer one another at the time of a loved one's death that enables those closest to the recently departed one to share some of their grief, to talk about their own feelings, their memories and their thoughts. We are all on this journey of life, and it can only happen one step at a time. We know that journeys teach us great lessons, but they do have endings. To live a full life, we need a way to understand the suffering we do and unfortunately must endure. Looking back at other difficult times can give us a better perspective of how we feel today. We can all recall a loss or a sudden change that we would never have chosen for ourselves. Death is inevitable. We are all going to pass away one day. But grief follows us all, and the best we can hope for is the love and support when we are thus affected. We all grieve differently, and our reactions may show in many different ways. But one thing remains the same for all of us. We can only feel grief where we have felt love. For the same path that grieves is the path that loves, and it is this that allows you to mourn Will's death today. It is in the presence of death that we instinctively turn to others for comfort, strength and support, and we find it so readily given. Indeed, the help from family and friends is very reassuring and welcome for all who are closely involved at a time like this. For it is a very hard matter to face, and no one should ever face it alone. Though no longer a visible part of your lives, will remain a member of your family or circle through the influence he has had on you and the special part he played in your lives. We will all suffer loss and sorrow throughout our lives, and the support we give to others today will be returned to each and every one of us in our own time of need. When a person has suffered illness and loss of some mobility, which is inherited by growing older, when they leave this world, it is still heart-wrenching for the family and friends that are left behind, in having to get used to life without them. I strongly believe that each one of us is a very special and unique person, and because of this, the relationships and associations that we form with others during our lives becomes very important. We know that the value and meaning of life consists in living it and living it well. And this afternoon, as we come together here to remember Will, you might like to quietly give thanks that you were a part of his life and he was a part of yours. For it is because Will was a part of your life, his death brings a sense of real and deep loss to you. When we lose someone we love, especially to death, it leaves us with many different emotions. For some, there are feelings of emptiness, despair and hopelessness, and this very deep sense of loss can be far worse than any physical pain. You will all have your own individual memories of your involvement with Will, and these times that you shared with him will give you comfort, and as you share these memories with others, it too will comfort them as well. You have probably heard it said that you only truly die when you no longer are remembered. However, for as long as we do remember Will, he will forever live on here in our hearts and in our minds. My apologies for that interruption. I would like to read a poem titled, His Journey's Just Begun. Don't think of him as gone away, his journey's just begun. Life holds so many facets, this earth is only one. Just think of him as resting from the sorrows and the tears, in a place of warmth and comfort, where there are no days and years. Think of how he must be wishing that we could know today, how nothing but our sadness can really pass away. And think of him as living in the hearts of those he touched, for nothing loved is ever lost, and he was loved so much. We now come to the time of the eulogy. I'd like to invite Jane to come forward to share it with you.
Thank you, Kate. Hello, my name is Menary, and we're gathered here today to farewell my father, William. Known as Billy as a child, and Bill to his family and friends for most of my life, he came to prefer being known simply as Will. My father was a complex and private man. I'm not entirely certain that I can fully capture his life with my words alone, So I would ask everyone here to reflect for a moment on a memory that is special to your relationship with him. I know relatively little of his early life. He was born in Malaya and evacuated to Australia from Singapore with his mother Emma, our Nana, when he was still very young. His father James did not survive to join them. They lived for a time in Australia before returning to Scotland, where he continued his education after the war. He was always proudly Scottish, and he never let us forget that he was Scottish and we had Scottish roots. He graduated from the University of Glasgow and became a teacher. He met our mother, a fellow graduate, but in medicine, married, and they promptly emigrated to Australia to teach and start a family. One of my very first memories of him is in our backyard in a little house in New South Wales, and he showed me a banana tree. That was unusual. We weren't there for many years. Scotland and a new job beckoned, and the family sailed to the UK, where we lived in Mulgai, Glasgow. Whilst Dad taught at the Glasgow Boys High School during the day, Mum took up some locum work during the evenings after looking after my siblings during the day. I started school, so I was out of their hair. But it wasn't very long, it was only a couple of years, before the prospect of further opportunity in Australia beckoned, and we emigrated and ended up here in Adelaide, well, South Australia. Dad took position as an English teacher lecturer with the Adelaide College of Advanced Education, and my siblings and I soon found ourselves at school with his student teachers who were on placement from time to time. This kept us on our toes for several years. Wasn't always the most comfortable of situations, knowing that his students were right there, but it ended up being a useful experience. He also enjoyed working with his hands and building things. He built us a tree house and a cubby house down the back of the garden, and he built a fish pond in the front. It eventually endured a few rebuilds, gradually shrinking in size as he combated various leaks. But at its most magnificent, it was a favourite place for us to paddle in the summer with our dog. He was also responsible for building the floor-to-ceiling bookcases down our hallway. And these bookcases were filled with the most magnificent books, marvellous things. And this is where I learned of Dad's love of books and language. He was deeply interested in and studied the evolution of the English language, its myths, how it grew, and he was a great admirer of J.R.R. Tolkien, whose works explored the very same. His literary interests included both classic science fiction and fantasy, and the comic versions of the genre. And so I was introduced not only to The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but also classic sci-fi authors and the works of Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett, both two favourites of his. Both had a delightfully quirky take on mundane observations of the world, and their works reflect our world back to us in a brilliantly satirical manner which encapsulated Dad's sense of humour. It wasn't always immediately apparent, but it was a little on the wicked side when it did emerge. I know he found comfort in rereading his collection of Terry Pratchett over the last couple of years. My father was an educator, and he never stopped exploring opportunities to teach and learn. When I was a teenager, he took the family to Canada for a year on a teaching exchange. And while he was lecturing at local college in Hamilton, Ontario, I and my siblings attended local schools. Something of a culture shock. compared with Australian schools, but a valuable experience for all of us. It wasn't all learning, especially our summer road trip from Ontario to the East Coast Maritimes via the bordering US states. Apparently sparklers, you all know the lovely little sparklers and other fireworks, cannot be brought into Canada from the US as they fall under the firearms and gun battle legislation. Who knew? We found out the hard way and spent about an hour while the customs officers pulled the carefully packed car apart, checking that we weren't bringing in anything else. Later, after our return to Australia, Dad also found time to teach in Xi'an, China, taught English there, and he visited Kiribati in the Pacific to collect local folk tales. This was an accomplishment he was really quite proud of. He published these as the Tales of Kiribati in 1984. He also has other publications credited to him as part of his teaching career, and this includes a short film that he made in 1976 about one of Australia's film pioneers. It's called Reg Perry Remembers, and he was a pioneer from the days of the magic lanterns through to film. It's something that I remember in part because I accompanied Dad on at least one of his research trips, one of which was to a private archive of old books and film, where I was shown how film used to be cut and spliced as part of the editing process, a far cry from today's technology. Books and film were two of Dad's interests that I grew up with and I've never forgotten. Once I started university, however, and left home, we did grow apart, but I have always carried a love of reading with me, and when we did meet from time to time, we always talked about books and the authors that we admired. He instilled in me the sense of wonder and exploration that the world of imagination and books brings to life. Dad also had an interest in music, something he shared with Mum. Both enjoyed classical music and Scottish ballads, and both played the piano. He also had a guitar. Despite the odd effort to interest us in exploring the possibility of developing into musical prodigies, giving me a flageolet and later a xylophone, it was not something I took to, so I'm still relatively uninformed about the world of music. However, he told me how much he enjoyed singing with the singing group here, and I hope that one or more members here today might share their recollection of his time with them. I know I have barely scratched the surface of my father's life, and so I will end with the words of Terry Pratchett that I think he would have appreciated. So much universe, so little time. Thank you all for coming to remember my father today. I know he would have been humbled knowing how much you care for him.
Helen, would you like to come forward? Yes, you can.
Hi there everyone. My name's Kaylin, known to my dad as Kate, so I'm the third child. Jane's covered a few things. So, I don't know, this might be all over the place. But I'd just like to say thank you to everyone to come today as well. I know he's made home here for the past 20 years, and he's a very friendly and warm, welcoming community. So I think he was quite happy, he seemed really happy here. That 20 years I didn't know of his life. Apart from Jane, the rest of us have been estranged for just over 25 years, for personal reasons. But just focusing on memories and all the good things that have made me who I am today. And my memory wasn't so much academic, but really outdoors. I was a really outdoors person, and just loved camping. I remember just always encouraged us to go early morning swimming. However reluctantly we were in the morning, go swimming, and I love swimming. Lots of camping. He was heavily involved with the Scouts and became Scout Commissioner of South Australia, and so we were in numerous Scout camps, and I think there was a dress-up night, and I just wanted to dress up as a Boy Scout. And I did brownies and guides, and that was part of our childhood, was all these Scout camps. So yeah, we became very independent and capable. I wasn't allowed to do the motorbike camp, which I was a bit upset about. So when I turned 16, I bought a motorbike, which he wasn't too happy with, but nevertheless, being a teacher, he taught me. And actually, thank you to Jane for helping me. She was 18 to collect it. So I remembered that the other day. Another thing, Jane had mentioned, they loved skiing, and I believe they met in the Glasgow Ski Club through the Glasgow University, and so we were always going to the snow. That was a big part of our life as well, and he again taught us how to ski. Needed a lot of patience with us for that, but once we were off and skiing, we were like herding cats to come in and get ready to go home. Another big thing, I think, he was involved in the State Theatre Company, so I remember going to many shows and actually the Scout Gang shows, things like that. So I was very fascinated with the theatre and going behind the scenes, and both our mum and dad were very much into theatre. So yeah, he loved the theatre, and I believe you ladies, that he's in the theatre group as well, or the singing and theatre. So that was nice that he's continued that passion of his on. You mentioned Scottish. I just say, whenever I hear bagpipes or see tartan clothing, I think of my dad and my mum. I'm really there, it's all over. The place. Yeah, so I'm really grateful to my father for instilling in me a good work ethic, however his methods, ensuring that we all completed family chores. We had a routine board, and our schoolwork. So yeah, he was very he ensured we did schoolwork, family chores, and I mentioned that guys. This is my other favourite memory. Dad, mostly I remember driving the Commer van. Remember he had this Commer, it's a camper van, and it had a pop top, and they both love adventure and camping, and this would fit all 6 of us in it. So we'd have Jane and Chris would be on the top bunks that pulled out, Mum and Dad on the bottom, David was small and fit on the floor, and then I was on a little hammock over the driver's and passenger seat, so he managed to fit us all in. So I've got a lot of memories with that Commer camper van, and that's probably why I seem to do a lot of backpacking and travelling in my time and move around a lot. So I'm from West Australia, by the way. I've been there now just over 20 years. So I still come to Adelaide every now and then. So I started reconnecting with my dad after Mum passed a couple of years ago, and I write and ring him, and I was fortunate to visit him at Melaleuca. So hello to those from Melaleuca. Thank you for welcoming me there. And I was fortunate that was like 3 months ago. And I'd just like to say thank you very much to the Yorktown Hospital and the Melaleuca Nursing Home for looking after him and being there in his final moments, so he wasn't alone. That was really special. On that time that I took him out a couple of times in the wheelchair, and I joked that we would escape from the nursing home to the cafe where I'd buy him a little coffee, and he seemed to be amused by that. And I took him shopping, and he found a beanie, and he said something about Norwegians. It was grey, and it was a colour they had in Norway. So there was still there. There was, some memories, and I joked how I escaped him from there. And I just, thank you to his Dr. Peter Schultz, and I've mentioned that everyone who helped him, and all the friends that came to visit him, and Gwenda, I met Gwenda. I had a lovely chat, so thank you so much for your loyal support in visiting him, and to everyone else who visited my dad. And thank you to McQueen's Funeral Home for holding this service. And just may our Father now rest in peace, and that we find peace within ourselves. That's all.
Gwenda, would you like to come forward? You can, yes, Miss
Good, because it's very hard to talk with her on.
Yes, no, that's fine.
In January 2009, Will came along to our Tuesday weekly singing practice at the Singers We Go Singers at Waruka in the Uniting Church Hall. He introduced himself to our group of some 15 members and asked if he could join us. Naturally, we said yes. An extra male singer was always very welcome. We were really pleased that Will chose to stay with us when we heard his good, strong voice, just what our group needed. Although Will told us later that he very nearly didn't come back, as he thought we were a pretty casual bunch and had no conductor. But he did join our group, thank goodness, and soon he became an extended family member like the rest of us. We trained him well, we used to tell him, but no, he said, he had trained us. We had a brilliant accompanist, Isabel Clifton, who could adjust to any type of music to suit any member. For every combination of singers, she was the rock that kept our group going for so many years, because we were going for years before that. We performed songs, comedy skits, and skits and writing, and that was my department, to write the skits. Solos, duets, quartets, as well as our group songs. As we performed around 16 gigs a year at various nursing homes, we needed to practice every week, and we did too. There was no excuse. You had to have a letter from your mum if you couldn't come. And do you know how hard it was to get a letter from your mum when you're our age? And then, of course, we had costumes to make and programs to plan, and this kept us all very busy. It was a sad time for us all when Isabel, our pianist, left to live in Adelaide some 5 years ago, and our group had to disband. By this time, we only had 9 members, but we still kept going strong, and we all miss it still. Will and I used to go beach walking nearly every weekend if the weather permitted. He loved the sea and the trees and the scrub. He came to Sunday tea pretty often, and my 3 sons all liked him a lot. He was so interesting to talk to, they all said. And they would have all been present if severe circumstances, very severe, had not happened to prevent this from happening. I lost my son, one of my sons, before Christmas last year. The other one's in the Royal Adelaide at the moment, just had an operation on his hand. The other one has commitments. Will and I were both interested in books, words, and that was my vote. And Terry Pratchett, we had so many discussions. And we had a joke between us that if a spelling was wrong on the shop front, we couldn't go in that shop. That was no good. We couldn't possibly do that. Will adjusted to his life after a while, has changed, living in Melaleuca. To start with, I used to take him out a lot, but then I just visit him weekly. He always loved flowers, so I used to take him whatever I had growing in the garden, or sometimes I'd go around with friends, and when my flower garden wasn't there, I'd get something. I'm coming around, oh yes, you're going up to visit Willow, yes. Finally, I must say thank you to the staff at Melaleuca. They were so good to Will, looking after him in a way we would all want our family and friends to be looked after in these circumstances. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who might like to come forward and share a story? Yes? You can stand there if you like, unless you want to come up here, that's your choice.
I had no intention of being out here making a speech, but thank you for letting me. It was tremendous to hear something more of Will's life. We got to know him when he came here, and we found out little bits here and there, but just to hear the story that you gave. One of the, I finished up with, there were only 2 males left singing in our group, and it was Will and I, and one of the joys of our group was to be able to stand up there with Will and sing some of the Irish folk songs. It was beautiful. I don't know that our singing was beautiful, but just the experience for me I'm talking about. Yes, what else? Yeah, it was great anyway to share a bit of his life anyway. And I remember the last concert we put on in the Veruca Hall, and I think Will and I were the last item, and we sang the drinking song, in cellar cool, sit at ease, a pot of wine but resting. But I'm not going to sing it to you now. Yeah, it was good fun anyway. And another thing, I got a grant every time we have a presentation, either at Stansbury or over here at the nursing home, he would rig up his recording gear at the back of the hall, and so we've each of us got a record of our singing and presentation. So thank you to Will. Great.
Is there anybody else come forward?
This is going to be short and sweet, but I did just want to say to your family, Will's family, we counted ourselves lucky to have him with us. And my fondest memory was a poem that he used to recite, obviously Irish or Scotch or something. And I think one day we were getting to the end of a program and there was a little bit of a gap, and I said to Will, do his poem again. I don't think he was pleased to do it, but anyway, because it was a long one. But anyway, he was wonderful, absolutely.
This is fantastic, lots of stories.
I haven't got lots to say, so I'll just pull the mask down. I've only had the privilege of knowing Will for the last 12 years of his life. We had my 2 friends, Ellie and Robin, and I'd just like to say it's been an absolute honour to look after him. He's been our favourite resident and we loved him. Thank you.
Very interesting stories, and how they had a very fulfilling life. So wonderful. Thank you everyone for coming forward. We'll now spend a few moments in memory of Will. During this time, I ask that you think of the happy times you shared and the way that he has touched your lives individually. Life is not measured by the way you live, but the love you gave and the things you did. It's hard to believe that you've gone away, but in our hearts you will always stay. A happy smile, a heart of gold, the very best this world could hold. If you who knew Will can learn from his experience, if you can profit from his example, if you can live a little better for having known him, then this will give continuing purpose to his life and be a living memorial to him. May you find comfort and richness in your memories. May you find support in your love for one another. And may you find strength in your hearts. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand for the words of committal? As we lay to rest the body of William Menary, we retain the special memories of him. Rest now at the end of your days. Your work on earth is done. May you rest in the hearts and minds of all who you love. Will, your life we honour, your departure we accept, your memory we cherish. In grief at your death, but in gratitude for your life, and for the privilege of sharing it with you, we tenderly and reverently give the body of our loved one, William Smyth Menary, to be cremated. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust. Softly within the shadows there came a gentle call, with farewells left unspoken, you quietly left us all. If tears could make a staircase and heartaches make a lane, we walk the path to heaven and bring you home again. We hold you close within our hearts, and there you will remain, to walk with us throughout our lives until we meet again. We leave Will here in peace, and we go our way with continued concern and affection for one another. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Such was the life of William Menary. May he rest in peace. Ladies and gentlemen, this now concludes Will's funeral service here this afternoon. In a moment, I'll be inviting Jane, Kate, David, the immediate family, and those of you that are joined with us here today to come forward to place some rosemary, the herb of remembrance, onto Will's coffin as your tribute to the love, the life, and the friendship that you've all shared with him. From your time here today, the family have invited you all to join with them for refreshments just directly next door at the Sweetwater Function Centre. So you'll just be walking down the side of our building here and you'll see the garden area where you'll have some tea, coffee and refreshments available. Here is your time where you can reflect, share your many more stories of this wonderful man. May he rest in peace.